growth, embedding ecology into corporate strategy. The World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report 2025 identifies biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse as urgent global threats. This panel will explore how incorporating natural capital into corporate and financial strategies is both responsible and economically wise. Speakers will share approaches for embedding nature into decision making to unlock long-term value and advance a nature-positive future. To move on with this session, I would now like to warmly welcome the moderator, Ms. Madhulika Sharma, Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer, ITC Limited, and all the panel members of the session to the dais. The speakers in this session are Tony Goldner, CEO, Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, TNFD, Mr. Nadir Godrej, Chairman and Managing Director of Godrej Industries Limited and Chairman of Godrej Agrovet, Mr. Ravi Singh, CEO and Secretary General, WWF India. I request the moderator, Ms. Madhulika Sharma, to set the context and launch the joint publication between CII and TNFD under the India Business and Biodiversity Initiative, integrating nature-related aspects in business responsibility and sustainability reporting disclosures using the TNFD recommendations.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. So we just saw a glimpse of why this session is very, very important. There was a video which was playing on. But just wanted to reiterate that, the biodiversity and nature, if you have been following the World Economic Forum risk report, which comes out every year, biodiversity and nature used to feature as one of the top 10 risks, but in the last 5 years, it is amongst one of the top 5 risks. So, obviously this subject is very, very relevant for all of us and as well as businesses because, again, an estimate by World Economic Forum that more than half of global GDP, and the number is about $44 trillion, it is dependent on nature in one form or the other. And that is why, nature and biodiversity or the loss of nature and biodiversity which is happening now, the subject becomes very, very important and pertinent. Added to it, India, the country that we are living, is that it has a huge, diversity in biodiversity and nature. We are home to 4 biodiversity hotspots: the Himalayas in the north, the Western Ghats in the western areas, and the Indo-Burma region in the eastern part, and also the Sunda land in the southern part. Added to this is the huge, the population density that we have, because of which the land use change has been one of the key threats to biodiversity, added to the exploitation or over-exploitation of natural resources like water, which makes, this subject very, very contextual and important for country, for our country. So, it was understood, the impact and the gravity of this subject was understood, and way back in 2002, it was enacted as as an act with the Biological Diversity Act, and further it has been strengthened last year with the India National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, NBSAP, which is aligned with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and has set an ambitious 2030 target of restoring 30% of degraded ecosystems and also conserving 30% of land and sea. And the focus areas include the ecosystem restoration, species recovery, sustainable management of wetlands, coastal and marine areas, pollution and invasive species control, development of wildlife corridors and sustainable use of wild species and expansion of urban green space. The government has been doing its part on the biodiversity, but uh, there's an important role that the businesses also play, more from the dependencies that the businesses have on nature, but also the significant impact that the businesses create on biodiversity, and how they can actually minimize or optimize the use of natural resources as well as add value to it. With this context, about more than 10 years ago, the CII Center for Excellence, CII-ITC Center for Sustainable Development had, in collaboration with the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, created this platform of India Business and Biodiversity Initiative, IBBI as we all know it, in 2014. And it has helped us in aligning the global biodiversity framework. It helps businesses in setting up measurable biodiversity goals. Also, it has helped in integrating nature into the whole decision making. And today, it was about 10 plus membership when it all started. But today we have about 80 Indian and global companies are IBBI members, and more than 50 companies are committed to adopting measurable biodiversity targets and roadmaps to manage nature-related risks. So with this, I think I just wanted to set the context for the session today, why it is very important and why we need to also, as we are celebrating the 20th year of this center and this summit, and with the tagline of responsible, regenerative and reimagining, probably also we need to see what next for all of us on this subject. I'm very, very happy to, also introduce a very esteemed set of panelists that I have today, who will also share their thoughts. We have with us Mr. Tony Goldnertz. He is the CEO of Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures. We are very fortunate to have with us, Mr. Nadir Godrej, Chairman and Managing Director of Godrej Industries Limited and Chairman of Godrej Agrovet Limited. And also Mr. Ravi Singh, who has been, a mentor for not only the center, but also IBBI. He is the CEO and Secretary General of WWF India. With this, I think we'll do the first task and then start with the panel discussion. The, as it was mentioned while introduction of the session, that there will be a release of a publication by TNFD on the BRSR linkage. As I said, India and the Indian corporates have been doing their bit on biodiversity. Also, SEBI, when they came out with BRSR, they also understood the, the intersection of biodiversity, nature, economy, and ecology. And there are questions which are related to disclosure requirements which are related to nature and biodiversity. I think the effort from TNFD has been doing to not duplicate things, but how there can be an interlinkage between the two. So the publication, I'll now request to help us in terms of releasing the publication. I'll request all my panelists to, do this publication, after which this report will be available on TNFD website as well as the IBBI website. So as I said, this report is going to be available on the TNFD website as well as the IBBI website. We'll now start the panel discussion. So I'll first, Tony, I'll go to you, and as investor focus on biodiversity grows and trade rules tighten, what opportunities do you see for nature-based investments, and how should businesses be responding to this?
Well, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be back here in India. I was here 2 years ago, and I can sense the progress that's being made on this agenda just in the last few years. First of all, we're delighted with the release of the report today. This is the product of a terrific collaboration with IBBI, the team at CII, and input from many others. And we have done a series of these mapping reports about how TNFD relates to regulation in different markets. And it would be easy for everyone to think, well, this is just about compliance and about corporate reporting. But my central message for you today is that really the topic of nature is, as we heard from the introductory remarks, it really underpins the entire economy. The economy sits on top of nature. The cash flows of your business depend on flows of benefits from nature into your business models. It could be water, it could be pollination services, it could be soil health, right? These are all things that nature provides to us, and we take them largely for granted. And unfortunately, the science is telling us that way beyond climate change, our planet is now exceeding its capacity to provide us with those benefits. And so fundamentally, the weakening of the resilience of nature's flows means that our cash flows that are so important to companies and investors are now at risk. And so we have to take action on this, not just as a compliance or a check-the-box reporting exercise, but bring it into the core of strategy and risk management for your organization. And so while we've got the report today which maps to BRSR, it's really about triggering a broader mindset in both companies and in the investment community. And so I think there are a lot of opportunities that can come from this. The first is it's in everybody's interest, everybody's enlightened self-interest, to bring this into the core of your risk management and strategy for your organization. That's good for business and it's good for capital providers. The second thing is that as we come to understand our dependencies on nature and the impacts we're causing on the planet, and those two things are related, we start to understand the drivers of value in our business. And of course, we tend to think about productivity and human capital, but one of the other big sources of value creation in our business is the natural capital that we pull through into the business. And so as we start to understand that more, we can improve corporate strategy, we can improve risk management. That will underpin the resilience of returns for investors. But it's also going to unlock tremendous new opportunities for creating new products and services that don't extract value from nature, but potentially work with nature and look after the long-term resilience of nature. And I was in Mumbai yesterday talking to a number of corporate executives, as well as a session with your Institute of Directors, and I made the point that there is no reason why this tremendous innovation and product development opportunity can't be led by India. You have a massive domestic market, you have a terrific innovation base in the economy, and the world is crying out for new solutions, whether it's in packaging, so we can replace plastics with materials made from organic materials that are fully biodegradable. It can be new products from the oceans made of seaweed, for example, food products and other things. This innovation is desperately needed globally. I believe it's the beginning of very scalable new markets that can both be commercially profitable and beneficial for the planet. And I really hope to see that innovation led out of places like India, and I think also Brazil has tremendous potential in this regard. And so I think we've got to imagine new products and services. We have to, as we've seen with solar power, we have to relentlessly work on reducing the unit cost so that they are competitive with the current defaults that we use in our economy that are nature negative. But if we can do that, this is the beginning of a real transformation across sectors, and this is potentially a very rich vein for both corporate profits, for investment returns, and for innovation in the economy. And a huge market like India, you can test things domestically, and then that's the basis for exports to the rest of the world.
Thanks, Tony. So I'll now turn to you. So we just heard, Tony, that Actually, biodiversity is at the core of the strategy and it can actually be a value driver. So how does Godrej Industry Group, an environmentally conscious organization with huge biodiversity dependency, how do you integrate nature-related risks into your business, into your decision-making?
Right. First, I'll start with a few general comments about these issues in our group. We set our Good and Green strategy in 2011 and refreshed it in 2021 and are currently preparing ourselves for the third phase of our formal sustainability journey. We have been very successful on most of our goals, but have also learned a lot along the course, which has helped us refine our priorities and approach. We are at 71% renewable energy and will soon reach 75%. We use solar and wind, but because we have a lot of continuous operations, we use a lot of biomass for cogeneration, so we use both the steam and the electricity. We are 12 times water positive. One of the interesting things in India is at a very low cost, watershed development can save a lot of water. It helps farmers, it helps industries in the area, people living in the area. We started off with CSR projects, but now we often do watershed development around our factories. So we benefit everyone in the area, but we also benefit ourselves. We are committed to emissions reduction, aligned and validated with the global science-based targets. We have decided to be net zero on scope 1 and scope 2 emissions by 2035, and 74% has already been achieved. And we are signatories to the EP 100 commitment to reduce energy intensity by 50%. And we have already reduced energy intensity by 57%. In 2021, we zoomed out from focus on our operations to start looking at the value chain from process to product and strategies to reduce the impact arising from the various steps in the value chain. And this is when we started taking a much closer look at nature as well. We use a lot of agricultural commodities which are very dependent on nature. Nature and biodiversity loss is an area of extreme material importance, not just for the planet, but for us as a business. Regardless of sector or industry, nature is an integral part of the business sustainability. We have segregated our approach against 3 pillars of nature: water, natural capital, and biodiversity. We conducted detailed climate risk assessments of our operations and identified water stress as one of the top risks to be mitigated. But as I mentioned, watershed developments are very economical. And in spite of India's big water shortage, actually I think if we do good water management, both conserve water, use water efficiently, recycle water, and do watershed developments, I don't think India has a water problem. Despite our stellar performance in achieving zero liquid discharge operations at most of our facilities and continued investments in water treatment and recycling technologies, the challenges of water stress continue to worsen. But as I said, the solutions are there. We're already seeing the tremendous success of our flagship watershed programs, as I mentioned. We have saved more than 30 million kiloliters of water every year. This has not just made us multiple times water positive as a group, but has also allowed us to sequester carbon in these watersheds, improved soil nutrition and resilience, and given farmers the opportunity to improve productivity and enhance their livelihood. We found that the more we thought about it, the more we looked at solutions, the more technology developed, the costs of doing all these things were much less than we originally expected. And usually, sustainability is not a question of cost, but a question of having the right manpower to find the right solutions. We are now taking lessons from these watershed programs and applying them to pivot our operational water management strategy from conservation to stewardship of the catchment as a whole, benefiting all stakeholders. Many of our businesses also rely heavily on natural capital, be it agri or forest commodities as raw materials. We have assessed the physical risks that impact the availability, quality, and yield of some of the critical commodities, from the effects of heat stress on palm fruit size and oil content, impact of poor feed quality, and dry grazing patterns on milk production, water stress, soil degradation, and nutrient absorption for feed crops, and acute climate event disruptions to supply chains. We are now in the process of quantifying the financial impacts of these risks and incorporating them into our risk registry, informing business strategy and manufacturing plans. We are also conducting biodiversity assessments in the areas surrounding our key manufacturing facilities and plan to extend this to the value chain, which is under our direct purview. By building biodiversity risk registers, we want to create a net zero nature loss roadmap by 2030.
Thank you, sir. That's very impressive. So now I'll turn to you, and you have been, as I said, a mentor to IBBI and a thought leader on the subject. So while TNFD has now come with a framework, but how do you see Indian businesses adopting a consistent approach to valuing nature and considering dependencies, impacts, liabilities, and responsibilities? So we heard some examples of how it is coming into the risk register and how there is a, some metrics being given, and that's how it is driving. But how do you see for most of the Indian companies going forward on this?
Thank you. Are we still talking of ecology?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to clear that. Firstly, it's a great privilege to be here in this room. Many years we have spent in enduring partnership to try and shape through my organization some of the environmental and ecological concerns. And CII has just absorbed that as knowledge and have converted it into action, into sustainability, into other initiatives. So I think this is an example of my country through its institutions showing the world what can be done. It's not just a question of, and it's not showing in any competitive way, it's just that the way we are. The other thing I would say is that before answering the questions, one of the issues that comes to us is ecology. I mean, if you see the previous session that was on climate adaptation, and compared that to this one, which is talking about ecology, this is far more complex to understand as compared to adaptation. The reason is, ecology is also about understanding organisms and their interaction with each other, and therefore the interaction with nature, and therefore the interaction of the earth and its existence itself. And that is very evolved and very different. And to bring that portion of science, an essential element of nature, into corporate strategy is something, one, it is challenging. B, I'm sometimes astonished by the ambition we set ourselves, because this is very, very ambitious. And it's demonstrated, several organizations have demonstrated that this can be done, not just in actions of this thing, but proving what it means in terms of value and what it means in terms of cost and what it means in terms of longevity. And you have one example already here. Now, what can we do to make these points and risks more accessible, more transparent? What is happening at the back constantly, we see with the interactions that we, not just my organization, but others also have with, say, the Reserve Bank of India or SEBI or the Indian Banks Association or NABARD and several other institutions, that there is a understanding of the concerns that we have on the environment. There's also an understanding of how to convert this into a method that can be accepted for purposes of risk management. So while we don't have currently a way of measuring like TNFD have in India, though we have this internationally, but we've tried and we've succeeded in several such reporting. For instance, industry reporting on power consumption. Industry earlier reporting on how much saving they're doing in certain verticals. We also had a program for carbon disclosure, which for Indian industries was very, very, I must say, we were very far ahead in terms of, analyzing that and pushing that ahead. We've gone through these phases. I am privileged to be part of the Sustainability Awards of CII-ITC. And the kind of discussions that are happening at the back and the reporting that happens, the content, the detailing, the technical aspects of it, it's very, very impressive. Although I say it myself, but those are worth looking through and understanding, because the quality of reports that come afterwards on CSR and sustainability and ESG and others are, for me from an environmental conservation organization, they're wonderful to read. But they are generally full of good knowledge. They have specifics with regard to their particular sector, and they're showing how they're implementing this. So gradually we are moving forward to some kind of a analysis and standardization. It'll take us time. It'll take us time because when we started this, and we started on this journey, IBBI 2014, I think. The discovery, the conceptualization was done with us to a large extent, I would say. And the document that was there was launched in our office with 10 or 14 members to start with, and from where to where it's gone. From a national center of IBBI, it's gone into regional centers, and some of those discussions are really very, very good. So these are some of the examples going forward. And with that, what we have seen this journey, that it has gone from discovery, the phase of discovery, to a phase of knowledge, collection of information and data, to action, measurement, and to improving itself. So every phase of how we would say we are doing, or we would write a qualitative software to come to a particular result, I think quite a lot of those elements are there in this. So quantification of this is happening, not to the extent that we always want. There are a lot of things that we'd like to criticize or see improve, etc. But by and large, for a country of our size, complexity, to go ahead and understand this is something completely different. I would just say two more things. One is that my world of nature, conservation, etc., complex as it may seem, but once you are in it, it shows you a lot. And you understand things in a very different way. In the small film that was shown before we started, there were three excerpts. One was a group, I think, of egrets flying across a grassland. The second was a group of a herd of elephants. And the third was a tigress with her 2, possibly 3 cubs. It is very likely that people amongst my teams, maybe partners who are sitting here, would have actually seen and monitored those activities, especially the elephant and the tigers. And we would know the ecology where it is and how it works. So we'd like to see some of this knowledge also to be understood and imbibed by people who are here in the corporate sector. And lastly, I'd say that nature is coming to an end in terms of how much it can sustain all of us in keeping with the limits that we have, which it has, and the kind of things we require of it for the future. So if you are looking at reuse, regenerate, understand, move ahead, and to imbibe ecology into some of the work that we do, we are actually at a point when we've gone from sustainability to understanding nature better, and we are on a good step to take this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As always, very insightful. So I'll just also take, your point on how businesses have started understanding nature and, taking the next step with an example of ITC. So we have recently published on 5th of June our first TNFD report. As I was mentioning to Tony, it's not that, ITC has a huge nature dependency. So we have been historically very doing initiatives on the nature side, on the upstream value chain, and also as part of our CSR. But what TNFD has helped, I think, as a framework, reporting framework, in terms of understanding our impacts and dependencies in a very holistic and comprehensive manner, and then designing our mitigation actions where it is necessary to do, and not to do it as an ad hoc one-off things. So that's where TNFD, I think, helps us as a framework. On this, I'll come back to you, Tony, on that, so now, over 500 companies have adopted TNFD. There are a lot of companies who have started sharing their reports. But what do you see the future direction in terms of, one, that nature is also a very, it has a geographical context. So as I said, even in India, between two districts, there could be a different nature, contextual things. So how do you see, first of all, what's next in the whole reporting thing? And also, how do you see country-specific reporting standards evolve? So we did just one alignment, but, of course, so what do you see as a TNFD, what next steps,
Very good. And first of all, thank you for your leadership in your company's efforts to get on this journey. And I'm pleased to say there are 6 or 7 other Indian companies that have already published their first generation TNFD report in the last 12 months. So it's terrific to see. I think while TNFD as a disclosure initiative often gets put in the box of corporate reporting and compliance, that's obviously a big part of our mandate, but it's not all of what we're trying to achieve. Fundamentally, this is about changing the mindset of business and the way it thinks about its relationship to nature. And if we can trigger that mindset shift, we can help business understand how to better manage its interface with nature, not just for the benefit of the planet, but also for the long-term benefit of the business. Right? This is about the resilience of the planet drives the resilience of your business. And if we can get people to understand that, I think then this becomes a necessity for the long-term future of your own business, irrespective of whether you have a reporting requirement or regulation or such things. Now, in India's case, of course, you do have regulation for the top 1,000 companies, and that's why we did this mapping work with the support of CII. And what it shows is that there's a very high level of consistency and alignment between the TNFD recommendations and the BRSR approach, which is fantastic. And the TNFD started in 2021, so we had the great good fortune of actually looking at India's experience and its arrangements before we started our work, and it was one of the inputs into our work. So we shouldn't be surprised that there's a high level of alignment now. But whether you look at the disclosure statements that are required or the specific metrics, there's a very high level of consistency between the two. And so as we think about this going forward, some of you might be asking the question, well, I have to do BRSR because that's regulated. Why would I bother with TNFD? And my answer to that is quite simple, that more and more Indian businesses are part of global supply chains. As you integrate into the global economy, you have a fundamental role in most of the world's supply chains now, which is amazing. And there's a lot of global investors are increasingly interested in investing in India. So in addition to meeting the information requirements of your domestic regulators and your domestic investors, you increasingly have to meet the information needs of your international investors and also your international customers, because they too will have their own reporting requirements. So our job at TNFD is we're not a standard, we're designed to influence the standards landscape. And ultimately, we should disappear. That's our goal, is to make ourselves redundant in the next 2 years. Not many companies can say that, but that is actually our objective. And we will disappear when we're confident that nature is well reflected in a robust set of standards for business to act on. And so we're delighted with the findings of our mapping to BRSR. So India is already in a good position. And I think as we heard the ministers, both ministers actually this morning say, this is a source of competitive advantage. It's not about compliance. Indian business is actually now incredibly well positioned to be able to meet these information requirements and differentiate yourselves in a very competitive global landscape. Because what we're already seeing is that as investors seek out this information, they're now increasingly asking more and more difficult questions of the companies they invest in, or banks that lend to, or insurance companies that are providing insurance. And those companies that can answer those questions immediately stand out from those who don't. And in the most extreme case, we're seeing investors divesting from companies that are not on top of their nature-related issues and may in fact present risks to both the company's future financial performance, but also the reputational risk of the investor, right? So physical risk and transition risk both translate into financial risk. So this is important for a number of reasons. So if you have international investors in your share registry, I would encourage you to look at TNFD because that'll help you meet their requirements. If you're part of global supply chains, I would encourage you to look at TNFD because your customers are probably going to start coming and asking you for this kind of information. And thirdly, I think the TNFD assessment tools are going to help you develop more robust domestic disclosures in line with BRSR. So there's 3 reasons why you should do this. And our job now is to work very closely with particularly the International Sustainability Standards Board, the ISSB, who have already embarked on the next phase of their work on nature. So they've done climate standards, S2. They're now looking at nature-related reporting standards, which will be the global baseline for the international community. And we are working very closely with them. So to answer your question directly, one of our key priorities in the next 12 months is supporting the work of the ISSB so that we arrive at a globally consistent set of requirements around the world, alongside the climate reporting standards that are there, but covering all of the other aspects of nature, because of course TCFD and ISSB's S2 standard only cover emissions into the atmosphere. So there's still a lot of work to do. TNFD has provided the guidance, and we look forward to aligning the global standards.
Thank you. I'm conscious of time. So while I have questions for my panelists, but we can take maybe a couple of questions from the audience. So if there are any questions, you can just raise your hand, tell your name, and then tell if you have any question at any particular panelist. Okay. So it seems all questions have been answered by the esteemed panelists here. Okay. In case there are no questions, then I'll just very quick one, sir, to you. You know, what steps should businesses take to incorporate nature-related risks into their financial assessment? So you mentioned about, you know, including it, doing risk assessments and including in the financial registry, risk registry. So, but very quick one on just this.
One thing is to undertake a TNFD-based risk assessment and of the value chain to ascertain risks and opportunities related to the identified high materiality impactful elements. This helps business incorporate these financial elements into their business planning and instills greater confidence among investors and customers about the organization's future readiness. At Godrej, we completed our TCFD aligned assessments a few years ago, which gave us a good indication of some of the critical physical climate risks our businesses were likely to face. 2 of the most critical were heat stress and water stress. We have already started on working on solutions to solve for both of these, and we have now also started to evaluate nature-related risks and have assessed that the greater threat of nature loss is in our supply chains. Hence, we are now planning on undertaking a TNFD-based risk assessment for key commodities in our supply chain, which are palm oil, milk, soy, maize, and rapeseed. We have completed our preliminary studies for 3 of these commodities and in the process of creating a landscape level study and intervention framework to mitigate the climate risks. This will be a collaborative approach as these value chains are shared by multiple stakeholders, and we are currently identifying the right mix of partners to help us co-create and implement this project.
Thanks, sir, for sharing that. So last question and a quick one on that. You know, how do you see both India and institutions like IBBI, you know, now what next in terms of road ahead on your question on ecology and economy? So, yeah.
I think, I mean, being part of some of the process of growth for 4 to 5 years in the sustainability institution of CII-ITC, I think we were still asking some fundamental questions. Well, we were doing some work, but we were asking certain questions. And one of the answers came at that point of time from Mr. Deveshwar himself, who said, I think we should stop trying to market sustainability in the way we are doing it, and we should change it in the sense that sustainability is actually sustainability of the business in the economic and fiscal sense. It's not just a concept of use, reuse, and that sort of thing. It's much broader. It should be culturally absorbed and all that. Many such stages were crossed where we went into certain areas, and perhaps one of those was the leadership to go and found IBBI. I've come across several institutions, initiatives in the international fora, not all of them perhaps, but quite a number. And I think some of these stand out as far as India is concerned. IBBI certainly does. We have a water institute and a climate council and IBBI, and we have other smaller councils that we interact with the CII sort of external play on this area. And it's fairly important, fairly deep, fairly serious. It's also, as I mentioned earlier, sectoral. I think this now, the way I see this is that it'll itself evolve into a higher plane of interaction. Because I think we have come to an area of knowledge and understanding where the basics are very clear. We've seen the results. We've seen the results of adaptation in some of the leading industries of India. We've seen the knowledge base, and I think we are at a point when this will go forward. Perhaps, is it an inflection point? I certainly think it's likely to be. Because institutional interactions with the government of India, institutional leadership with organizations like the Niti Aayog, industry, sectors, and to some extent the scientific community are in a way gradually converging onto this side. Maybe scientific community, other than those who deal with natural sciences, are a bit far away from it, but that seems to be coming closer. So this is the change I see. I'd just like to say something else on ecology before. It's a fairly complex thing we are still learning. My organization, we work on ecological model and other things. Just very briefly to tell you, it took us in certain parts of India up to 100 to 150 years to actually tabulate the number of species that would be there in that area, in the wild, in a natural area, in a landscape, in northeast, certain areas. Between 150 to 120 years to do so. Today, technologies exist where you can actually do the inventory of all these in a period of less than a season, an entire season. You understand seasons of season. So it is through a reverse analysis of DNA. And if records exist in India in scientific institution, you can actually say that these species were there. Now, some of these have different dynamics for conservation and therefore knowledge and understanding. And we would like, with the scientific community, to be able to transfer some of that knowledge to members of the CII. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we've come to the end of this panel discussion. Is there any other any question? Otherwise, we'll do a wrap-up. Is there any question? Okay. So just, we started this, I think very well said that we are at an inflection point. We started, I think we can very well say that, nature and biodiversity, it has to be integrated, the natural capital has to be integrated with the financial capital, especially, with the overexploitation of resources and the kind of extreme weather conditions that we are seeing. Actually, there's a close nature, and climate nexus, which we need to assess and manage our risks well. frameworks like reporting frameworks like TNFD, they offer us a framework against which we can assess our risks and opportunities. And then it's not only about reporting, but it's also upon actioning upon those. Once you have identified your dependencies, impacts, risks, opportunities, I think then integrating it back into your strategy. I think that's how we see this subject panning out, and hopefully we have been able to answer some of those with the sharing of experiences in the panel discussion today. So thank you, sir, once again. Thanks all of you for this valuable sharing of these insights that you all have. Yeah. So.
Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we end the session. Our sincere gratitude to our panel members and the moderator for making this an interesting discussion. Could all our speakers gather for a group photograph, please? May I request the moderator, Ms. Madhulika Sharma, to present the token of gratitude to our panel members, Tony Goldner, Nadir Godrej, and Mr. Ravi Singh. May I now call on Ms. Tarika Kumar, Deputy Executive Director, CII-ITC, Center of Excellence for Sustainable Development, to present the token of gratitude to our moderator, Ms. Madhulika Sharma. I request all the delegates to be seated as we have two interesting sessions on Global South, followed by a ministerial session at 5:30 p.m.